All right, we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sports to Suits Live. I'm your host, Amanda Banks. And if you're new to tuning into the show, I have the honor of highlighting former athletes or people working in the sports community to discuss how they're leveraging their background in sports to see success in business. And I am super excited today about today's guest. We have Dr. Shira Ackerman on the line today with us. We are so excited about this. So, when you're tuning in, please drop us a comment. Let us know where you're listening from. It's always exciting for me to kind of hear who's listening and where they're tuning in from. So, definitely drop us a comment. Let us know that you are listening into the show. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce, like I said, Dr. Shira Ackerman. Shira, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be an awesome conversation. So, for anybody that's tuned in for quite some time, knows that I am super passionate about youth sports. I'm a mom myself of kids that are in sports. So, today we're really going to discuss things around education and developing youth character, teamwork, culture, all the fun things. But before that, I want to make sure technically all of this is working. So, Shira, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background just about yourself? How you actually got into sports, and then some of the work that you're doing today. And then we'll take it back once we make sure everything is up and running good.
Absolutely. So I actually played basketball in high school, and I went to college and played basketball, a small Division III school in upstate New York. And after that, I spent a lot of time working with kids, primarily kids with special needs. And I went, when I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And so I worked with young kids in the special education field. And then I went and I got my PhD in applied behavior analysis at Columbia University. And while I did that, I actually had the privilege of working with a lot of children on the autism spectrum, but a lot of typical kids as well, and spent a lot of time learning how to run programs. So I then got to run early intervention programs out in Washington State. So I went from one side to the other, and then still had a lot of interest in basketball, but was primarily working with kids and behavior. And interestingly enough, my husband and I met in a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. One of
Were
the
you guys
largest.
playing each other or?
No. Fortunately, I think my team would have lost very badly if we did that. They were pretty good, but we were in one of the largest 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, Hoop Fest in Spokane, Washington. And I met him the evening after the first day of basketball, and we hit it off. Got to know each other. He lived on the west side of the state in Seattle, and I lived on the east side in Spokane. And he was working with a lot of youth for basketball. He had his own travel teams, but primarily he was training and developing these kids in the gym. And I started going to some of the basketball games because I hadn't been to basketball games for younger kids in a long time. And I loved it. And it was so much fun. And I started helping him with the guys he was working with because they were primarily, middle school, high school age. And it was a natural fit. So we, over time, I helped him work with the young guys he was working with. And we had a young man who needed one more core class for college, for NCAA, sort of, so that he could actually play basketball in college. And we needed to find a prep school, but we didn't know much about prep schools. And another young man that my husband had worked with previously had gone to a prep school in Dallas. So we sent this new young man to the school in Dallas, and things were not really going the way we liked it. And so my husband took a few young men from Washington State, and they kind of moved into the prep school so they could see if he could fix it from within. And after 3 weeks, he called me and said, "We can do this and we can do it better." And my answer was, "Do what exactly?" And he said, "We're going to start a prep school." I said, "Okay, in Texas?" Because I'm from the East Coast. And so we were in Washington State, but I was like, of all places, Texas. It's like, oh, okay. And he said, yes. And I said, all right, well, I'll figure out how to start a nonprofit in Texas and get you guys housing, and the boys can still go to the same charter school for high school. And then the next February, I moved down. And then that's kind of how we got where we are now.
So for anybody that's tuning in that may not know what a prep school is, what
Yes.
exactly is a prep school?
Well, prep schools are programs designed for kids typically who need another academic year or just another year of development in any sport. And they have them for tennis and football and basketball and baseball. They have them for all sports. And the athlete will attend, usually move in and live in that kind of setting, and they play competitively in their sport they have the ability to play for an entire season or an entire year without losing any eligibility. So then they get whatever academic piece they needed for their college credit, or they just get the development that they needed. And now they have a better opportunity to be recruited for college scholarships, or the school they wanted to go to that wanted to recruit them will send them and say, you just need another year of development. I need you to play against better talent. So that's typically how prep schools are set up.
Okay, so let's take it back a little bit, because I have a ton of student athletes that tune into this show, and I always like to ask the questions around, what are some lessons that you learned playing college sports that maybe would apply to, tips or tricks or something that they could, little nuggets of information that they could take with them in their college journey?
I would say don't take it too seriously. College sports are college sports, but there's your entire lifetime to learn things in college that you take with you. And I remember hearing, throughout high school, you'll meet your lifelong friends in college, right? And you think, well, you have best friends in high school. Why would you not have them as lifelong friends, right? It didn't seem to make sense. And then I also heard a lot of people, and I've said it to the young men in our program, the best thing about college is you get to go and take classes and learn about things you didn't know anything about. And you might find something you really like and a lot of things you don't like that you thought you liked. Yep. So college sports, it's an opportunity to get you access to the education, but it's also an opportunity to teach you, as a college athlete, you need to learn there's a system, right? It's not always like it was in high school. There's a lot of politics for college sports. And so if you don't know that going in, you're going to have a rough experience. So you really can't take it too seriously. Not everyone's going to go play professional out of college in any sport. But to get the experience, all those teamwork skills and being part of a team and success. In some schools, you get to travel, not Division III, we didn't go anywhere, but bigger schools, you get to travel and experience the world and meet people you wouldn't otherwise. And that's what you should use college sports to teach you, because there's all these opportunities you wouldn't necessarily get if you didn't have those experiences.
Well, and if you're tuning in, you don't have to be a D1 athlete to reap the benefits of being on a team sport. So if you're playing D3, D2, whatever category you're in, use that as a platform and a learning opportunity for all of these amazing things that could potentially even be soft skills. So what are some other things aside from teamwork that apply maybe on the softer side? For me, it was discipline. I was not a college athlete, but I was a high level competitive gymnast. And for me, it was maintaining discipline and having resiliency, which was something that I kind of took from the sport. So what are some other things, maybe even people that aren't athletes, that could pull from your experience as a college athlete and say, oh, these are some soft skills that may make sense in that environment?
Well, I think you're right. Discipline is huge, and mental toughness. You mentioned resiliency. It's understanding that situation is almost out of your control. So you work hard and you do everything to make yourself the best member of the team for whatever sport you're playing. and understand what happens on the field, on the court, whatever the situation. You don't have control over that. So take those skills and use those to build your own business, to go out and support your community organizations, to be a better member of your family, to start your own family and teach those life skills to the youth that you interact with, or even if it's just your own siblings, so that those are skills that you're going to carry through with anything you do. That's why, companies say they love hiring college athletes, because you have those types of skills that are going to be successful for you no matter what you do.
Okay, so let's go from college into, so your PhD is in, and remind me, it's applied behavioral analysis. So what specifically does that mean? So for people that are tuning in that may not know exactly what that means, what does that mean as well?
Well, the simple way of looking at it is it's a scientific approach to teaching.
Okay.
So everyone has behaviors, right? Whether, you're talking about a child or an adolescent, an adult, you're talking about animals. Behavior is behavior, right?
Yep.
And that's always been my favorite phrase to say, because anything that's going on, if you can figure out what the behavior is and what caused it, what's reinforcing it, what's helping it continue, what stops it, then you can really begin to understand how to help somebody learn.
Fascinating. Okay, so I want to bring it back to teamwork, because I think that this applies this applies in all facets of life, whether it's on the field, on the court, maybe in the boardroom, or, maybe from a remote session standpoint, right? So what are some things that maybe some leaders, some educational bits that you can provide to people that are tuning in that want to lead their teams better?
Absolutely. I think, there's a difference between a boss and a leader,
yep,
right? And
totally agree.
People say it all the time, but if you're not in those situations, you don't understand that there really could be this distinction. And leaders help their team grow. And if you're interested in really helping other people be successful, then you want to see them succeed. And it almost has nothing to do with the organization that everybody works for or the company that everybody is building. It has to do with the person's growth themselves. And, one of the things my husband, he says it all the time to everyone, is if you're not growing, then you can't be around me, because he wants to see everyone around him grow. And if you're not allowing him to help you grow, then you're not ready for what we're doing right now.
And part of that is making mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that especially in business, maybe more so than on a basketball court, people are fearful of making mistakes or doing the wrong thing. So that limits the success of the overall team or environment, or even the individual's ability to thrive and succeed, right? So what are your thoughts around mistakes, allowing an environment or a culture for mistakes to just be something that is okay?
Natural.
Yeah, natural. Everybody makes mistakes, right? But I think that there's this stigma in business about nobody can make mistakes, and that's just not how all of this stuff happens.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Especially when you think about learning, the only way you learn is through mistakes, right? So if you don't make any mistakes, you're not learning anything, because you haven't tried anything new. And if you don't try things, you don't learn things, and you don't grow. So if the environment that you're in, work-related, business-related, academics, sports, whatever it is, and everyone's worried about making mistakes, then no one will be successful, and the organization will not thrive, right? So, we have a 7.5-year-old daughter, and I've told her since she was really little, if you don't make any mistakes, you can't learn. Most little kids, they're perfectionists, right? They get really upset and frustrated when they don't get it right, or their toy tower falls down. It's just the idea that they have to be right. And I've been teaching her that since she was really little, that you have to be okay with making a mistake, because it means you didn't know something. And if you didn't know it, well, then now let's learn what it is So now you have one more skill to add to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And, mistakes should be encouraged, because if you're not making a mistake, you haven't tried anything different. And the one thing, we tell the young men in our program all the time is making mistakes is what you're supposed to do. It's if you don't learn from the mistake and you continue to make the same mistake over and over again, well, then we have a different situation. You're not trying to learn from it. But just the idea of making mistakes, you're supposed to do that.
And so Sarah Blakely, I'm a huge fan of Sarah Blakely, and she talked about very similar to your approach. And I can't remember exactly what her dad used to say to her, but it was the same thing, asking her, what did you fail at today? I think that's what it was. It's like, what did you fail at today? And you're right. I mean, because I want to dive right into youth sports from this conversation, because I think that we put so much pressure on our kids when it comes to youth sports. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. So if you're tuning in and you're guilty of it, drop me a comment, because I am the first one to say I am very, very guilty of this. But at times, parents cause an environment where we're demanding perfectionism around our kids in certain scenarios, right? So there's this challenge in youth sports today. And so we're taking youth sports and removing fun and applying the weight of the world on our kids' shoulders. So I know I'm not the only one that has done this a time or two, right? So I do want to ask, from your perspective, maybe parents listening in that may have kids in youth sports, whether it's a rec league, whether they're highly competitive athletes, what are some things that we can do as parents to better support the development and just allow them to be kids and have fun?
I'm glad you brought this up. You're 100% right. Youth sports have become very results driven, right? So not only do you need to win and the team needs to win, so the coach needs to win, but the players are supposed to get some kind of scholarship out of this. And we're talking about young kids that are years away from anyone even looking at them for scholarships. And, the kid is the ticket out for the family, right? So this is how we're going to get into a better situation, because they're going to get a scholarship or they're going to earn money playing a sport. So we're going to start at age 5. And it's unfortunate. And you're right. I'm guilty as well. Our daughter's 7.5. She played basketball for the first time this past spring in a city league that we help out in the community. And she showed no interest in basketball. And she's an athlete, but she does not have any idea what she's doing. And most, they were 6, 7, and 8-year-olds on the team. None of them knew what they were doing. But I found myself, I was just frustrated watching her if she wasn't working hard, right? She wasn't playing hard, because that was my thing. And I was like, wow, she's 6. Like, maybe I should just sit here and enjoy this. But there were lots of family members that were really hard on their kids. I mean, really yelling and screaming at them. And these are little girls. And I thought, okay, so we're missing it here. We need to remind ourselves that youth sports are supposed to be fun. This is the age that kids are supposed to play as many sports as they want and have a good time and figure out what they like and what they don't like. Because most kids, they change their mind all the time. Well, I want to do this. No, I want to do this. I want to do gymnastics. I want to do karate. I want to do basketball. I want to do dance. And they don't know what they want to do. It's whatever their friends are doing. So they want to go try. And we forget they're supposed to have fun and enjoy themselves. And those are the life skills they're supposed to get out of youth sports. It's playing on a team with people. It's having fun as a group together. It's supporting and cheering on your teammates. And if you have parents yelling and screaming in the stands or on the sidelines and yelling at the officials or the referees, and now you have the parents with all this anger and anxiety, now the kids are going to do exactly what their parents are doing because that's their model. And it's not their fault. They figure, well, Mom and dad are saying it's the ref's fault, or it's the coach's fault, it's my teammate's fault. Well, now I'm going to be mad at everybody. Instead of letting them have fun and figure out how to play together. I mean, it's hard enough for little kids to learn how to play together on a team. They just figured out how to share. So now you want them to play together and share whatever the ball is, the basketball, whatever it is, and they have to listen to a different adult that they don't have in their life, and they're supposed to let that adult teach them something. These are all life skills, and if we put all this pressure on being the best and winning and the most competitive, now our children, they're not learning any of those skills, and all that happens is they start to dislike sports. And now kids who could have had a lot of fun and built really good friendships and life skills don't want to do it anymore.
So, okay. So as you're talking, I'm processing all of this information, and I'm also thinking to myself, as adults, how often do we not pursue the things that we're interested in? Because
Yes.
we're so laser focused and told, hey, your career has to be this specific way, this specific path. This is all that you can focus on to be successful. And as I'm thinking through that, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on even adults losing the ability to allow creativity to take over and to allow our passions, the things that make us unique and who we are? Where do we go off the wayside with that?
Well, I'm going to bring up the book I just wrote, okay? Because
Okay.
this is what I write about in there. The book I just wrote, Creating Young Minds, Inspiring Our Youth and Athletes, is based upon our program and what we've done for almost 11 years now, and taking behavior analysis and my background and the educational piece and giving stories of all the young men that have come through the program to show how what we teach works effectively, and working with families and creating teamwork environments. But one of the main things that I talk about in there is exactly what you just said. And this is for our youth and athletes. So it's 100 times worse for adults.
Yep.
If you think back when your kids were infants and toddlers, right? We were so excited at everything that they do. Everything was exciting, and everything they did, we celebrated, right? And then they were successful, no matter what it was. You'd go and tell someone, that they sat up for the first time all by themselves, that they took a can of cream of mushroom soup and picked it up and carried it, but they shouldn't be able to do that, right?
Yep.
All these things that we were excited about. And then they go to school, and now we've automatically changed to where we decide their success is based on the school system.
Yep.
So they've already lost their individuality, because they went from individuals that everything they did was special and unique, to now they have to fit into a group environment, which is what the education system is. I mean, I've taught for over 20 years, so I know it's very much about the group and not about the individual. And we celebrate the success that the school says we should celebrate. So now think about, you've got a 5 or 6 year old and you ask them what they want to be when they grow up. And they say, I use this example all the time. They say, I want to be an astronaut, right? And we say, that's great. And we get excited and we buy them books on space, and we buy them, the bed sheets that have space on them, and Legos to build, the rocket.
Little stars. I remember buying those little, they're like little stars that glow at night.
You put them up on the ceiling. Yes. Yeah. So whatever it is, we go all in, and we tell them they can be anything they want to be. Now, fast forward, and you have a teenager, and you ask them the same question, and they give you the same answer. They want to be an astronaut. And automatically our response changes. We go, well, okay. Do you like math and science? I mean, you really have to like it a lot. And your grades in math and science, they're not A's and B's, and you'll have to go to a really good college, and like MIT or something, to even get to that. And we've just killed it for absolutely no reason. Where we could have, if they said they want to be an astronaut, we say, okay, What do we need to do to get you there?
Yep.
You tell me, how do we get you from where you are now to being an astronaut? And maybe they figure out along the way that it's not an astronaut, but it's something still interested in that area. But it's their decision, not ours. So it's reframing how you have that conversation. So now you have kids graduating from college, and the parents are putting all sorts of pressure, and community members and family members and their friends. Well, where are you going to go work? Who hired you? What interviews have you had? Do you have a job lined
What's
up
the
for
salary?
graduation? Right.
Yep. This job, it makes this amount of money. This is entry-level position. This is where you need to be physically located.
Right.
Like, it's all structured in a routine.
And this is how you need to live. And, it's my husband lately, this has been a lot of what he's talked about. It's the rat race in the United States, right? So we work really, 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 really hard and really, really, really fast. And we do all of these things to chase something, and then we die. Right. So that's what you do. And it's unfortunate because it doesn't have to happen that way. And, we spend time with the young men in our program, and we say, okay, you have a platform, right? You're playing basketball. We've got a professional league. You have an audience. If there's something you're passionate about, let's figure out how you can build it into a business, because you have people who are already watching you.
Yep.
And now you take what you're passionate about and let's make it a business. So now you can be in control of your own success following your dreams. And we often get young men that come to us, whether they're 15, 16, 25, 28, and their families, they don't support their goals and dreams. They say, you know what, it's time. Just give it up. Go get a job. You've done basketball enough and it hasn't gotten you anything. So now you need to go get a job. And it's not unique to basketball. This is what's happening in general, because as adults, we put all this pressure on our youth that they have to follow a certain sequence. And if they don't, they've failed. But we don't help them accomplish what would be more successful for them.
And sorry, this is live, everyone, and we do have a FedEx that is dropping off, and I have dogs at the house. So sorry, everybody, for tuning in. And the noise in the background, it'll be better here in just a second. But okay, so I want to dive a little bit further into this, because you briefly touched on the labor force issue, right? So as adults, there's this huge issue with the labor force, right? Mm-hmm. So the problem that we're in is a lot of people are in roles that they may or may not be passionate about. There's the terms around quiet quitting and all of these different things. So there's toxicity in business, but there's also people that are interested in changing their career trajectory and pursuing their dreams. And so from your perspective, you guys jumped into entrepreneurship. And for anybody that's tuning in that has not been down this journey, let me tell you, it's a grind. And it is one of the most challenging things that I've personally ever been through. So when you guys, let's take it back to that. When you guys started launching Creating Young Minds, like, you had your husband brought you the conversation and was like, hey, this is what we need to do. We need to start a prep school. So what caused you guys to actually move forward in that? And the reason that I ask this is I have so many people that come to me and say, hey, I would love to do this, or I want to do this, or this is what I dream to do, but don't actually take that leap. And so I'm fascinated with people that actually put one foot in front of the other and decide to actually go down that path. So from your perspective, when you guys did that, what were you guys processing in your mind? And was it just something you were like, you know what, we're going to do this, no questions asked, we're going to go full force ahead? Or was it something that kind of happened over time? Or how did that work?
Well, if you ever meet my husband, he's got his mind set on something, and that's just how it's going to happen. And I just have to figure out how to make it happen. So that's kind of where we end up. So this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to do it. And let's just go. And as soon as, we got off the phone that day, I got in touch. One of his sisters lived in Texas and had her own business. So I called her. I said, how do I start a business in Texas? And she told me how to do it. So I went and set up the nonprofit, went through all the paperwork. submitted everything, got everything back. And that November, this was the end of October. So the beginning of November. So we were incorporated November 11th of that year. And then it was, okay, I need to find a job because I need to move down there. And we need to have an income at the same time with the nonprofit. And so I found a job. I came down. I was like, okay, so I can run the autism programs for Easter Seals, North Texas, and be a research scientist at UNT, University of North Texas, in their behavior analysis department. Like, okay, good. Got that set up and came down, had them all set up. And then it just took off. And doing the other 2 full-time jobs and the nonprofit only lasted the first year. And then that was it. It was too much.
But that's what a lot of people have to do, right?
Yes.
But it's committing to a goal and saying, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sacrifice. We're going to grind. We're going to do whatever we need to do to get this thing moving, knowing that this is not sustainable, right? But having a plan on what that exit or that transitionary period looks like for you guys. So what was the triggering factor? Was it the financial thing? Was it like what was it where you were like, I need to get out of this corporate role and focus fully on the business? Because there's a lot of people, and I'm asking these questions.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
a ton of people that are in transition right now that are maybe doing a side hustle or, trying to put together a new business and get out of their corporate roles or leverage corporate too. So I'm trying to paint the picture of somebody that's been through it, right? That can help share words of wisdom for those individuals.
Well, for our situation, I essentially had 3 full-time jobs, right? So I had the 2 that were paying, and then I had the nonprofit with my husband. And he was doing most of it by himself because there's only so many hours in the day.
Yep.
And I would help drive to trips, do overnight stuff, come back and not go to sleep and just take right off and go to work. And that it wasn't pleasant, but we did it. And by the end of that first year, him and I sat down and said, I can't even help you build this because the only time I have when I get home, it's putting the pieces together of whatever you did and then turning around and starting all over again. And it wasn't the nonprofit would not have survived if I wasn't able to stop and do it 100% with him. And so that's it. We just had to, or it wasn't going to last. And we knew our purpose in helping as many young men as we could grow and develop and be successful and achieve their dreams was going to outweigh the income we were saying goodbye to. And we just had to do it.
It's living on purpose, right? And this is the thing that I get really like fired up about is like living on purpose, like talking to people that are on mission and purpose-filled work. And what they're doing is like absolutely lighting up their life in every way, shape, or form. And so I'm going to drop a couple of banners. So for anybody that's tuning in, I'll drop some comments in the comment section below, but I want to talk very specifically about creating young minds. We've talked a lot about the program. We've talked about some of the work that you guys have been doing, but we haven't really discussed exactly what creating young minds is and the programs that you guys offer and how you came about actually developing those programs. So I'd love for you to share, if you don't mind, a little bit about creating young minds, what you guys have going on now, and also what the vision is maybe even for the future.
Absolutely. So we started with a prep school. So we had high school kids and guys out of that 1 year outside of high school that wanted to fulfill their dream of going to college. And the whole reason we started our program was to give guys access to opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise had. And whether that's education or basketball, community resources, whatever it was, we wanted to help them have access to that. And basketball was a really easy way of getting their attention, right?
Sports is a great platform.
Yes. And we housed most of our guys right from the beginning. So because we had guys from out of state, and we did have a lot of players from overseas as well. And all of our high school guys, they went to the local charter school, and we made academics their focus, right? Most of the guys that we had in the very beginning did not have success academically when they came to us. And a lot of that was because they didn't have successful experiences, not because they weren't capable, but because they didn't have those opportunities to be successful in a school environment. And the charter school.
What does that mean? So, like, what were some of the challenges that you were seeing with specifically some of your athletes? Because I want people to understand a little bit about, you know, some of the types of people that you work with as well, and some of the opportunities that you present to them. So, what, like, why, like, what were some of the things that, you know, they were challenged with that you guys kind of stepped in, and why weren't they passionate about the educational piece? Because I think that that's something that I think that that's something that's really powerful. And I think that there's a lot of kids that may not be doing super well in the current educational based system, but maybe slightly adjusting the way that they're taught or the resources that they have access can make a million times different. So,
well, absolutely. I put a lot of those stories for the young men that I'm going to explain in the book, because that's exactly why I want people to understand we have the ability to change the way they experience their educational environment. And we had lots of young men in the very beginning that didn't have success in the classroom because they often got into trouble. And the reason they got into trouble is because that was their home environment and the environment that they lived in. And they got a lot of attention for always getting in trouble. And this comes back to little kids. You know, if you continually give attention for misbehaving, well, then they're going to keep misbehaving because they're getting your attention. As opposed to giving attention for when they do what you want them to do, you give attention when they do what you don't want them to do. And that's natural. People, unless you put an effort to change that, that's how we respond to behavior normally. So in a school environment, it's the same thing. We had, you know, high school juniors and seniors that their entire school career, all they did was continually get in trouble. And they didn't pass their classes. They were on sports teams, but they weren't great teammates. They often got into fights during games, during practices. They were in the streets doing things they didn't need to be doing. And what it took was building those relationships with them and showing them that you can trust adults. You know, everyone isn't out here to tell you all the things you're doing wrong. And that, yes, you're not having some great experiences, but that doesn't determine your real ability. And, you know, most of these, you know, young people, whether they're athletes or not, that are not successful in school are extremely intelligent. They're just not given the opportunity to show that, because traditional school is for the group. Like I mentioned before, it's not for the individual. And if you learn differently, if you can't just sit and listen to someone lecture over and over and over again, then you're not going to give them what they expect. And therefore you're not successful. And therefore you don't get good grades. And so now you can't play sports and you can't do after school activities. And now you're getting in trouble because you don't want to go to class and you're skipping class. So now you just made this ripple effect where you have these young people having real negative experiences, when what we need to do is reframe how we interact with them. If we would have more positive interactions with them and reinforce them for what they're doing that's positive, and teach them the things we want them to do versus punishing what they're doing wrong. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, and now being a parent myself, and it's harder when you're a parent.
It is. So parenting is not for the faint at heart, just saying.
No, it's much easier to teach other people how to do it than to do it yourself. But punishment is extremely ineffective, because all you've done is gotten a behavior to stop, but you didn't replace it with anything appropriate. So if the behavior stopped, but you didn't replace it, the individual is going to replace it themselves, likely with a behavior that's even worse than the one that you stopped to begin with. And so teaching is what needs to happen. So giving athletes, giving our youth the opportunity to show what they know in a medium that works for them. And that's what the charter school that we worked with when we first moved down here, they were amazing. Everything was individualized because education is not individualized. The best educators, and I'm biased, but the best educators are special educators because they do individualize everything, because that's the way special education is successful.
They have to.
It's individualized. Well, everybody should be learning what's best for them, not just the individuals who need more help. So it doesn't make sense that the general ed doesn't use individualization like special ed does. But this charter school, everything was individualized and it was self-paced. So they went as quickly as they needed or as slowly as they needed to be successful. And what ended up happening is that group that we first had, they were very competitive athletes, very competitive. And very, aggressive athletes. We had to calm them down. But because they were starting to experience success in school, the teachers were happy to see them, and everyone, it was a positive environment. Now they competed with each other in school. Who was going to
became a game? Like it became a game to them. It became fun. Like it
was fun.
Yes.
And then they went off to college, and getting A's and B's was easy. We have some 15-year-olds in our program right now, and I was asking them about, school and how things are going, and high school is easy. I said, it should be. And they looked at me, I said, it really should be. This is not hard. You have assignments you need to complete, but if the environment is positive and you enjoy learning, high school's not challenging. And it's unfortunate because most people are not given the resources to make it enjoyable. School should be, yes, school's very social. Our 7-year-old thinks school's all about her friends, and so
no, but there's an element of that. Like, especially I've got one in middle school that's, in 7th grade, and I'm sorry, like whoever's tuning in, listening, like, I'm sorry. I have a daughter, almost teenage girls. That is a social scenario that I would never want to go back to.
Yes, it's rough.
Teenage girls are rough. It is difficult. So like if you're giving words of encouragement or wisdom to parents that are parenting teenage daughters that are going through that social scenario right now, I know it's hard for me at times to approach things in the 100% perfect way all the time, because we're humans. We're not supposed to be robots, right? But what are some ways that you could potentially approach some of those challenging social environments that our kids, our youth are going through? Because to me, it's part of the process, right? You're learning how to deal with emotion, hormones, difficult situations, all of these things that are part of our learning journey. But when you're in the midst of it, regardless of if you're the parent or the kid, it's tough. So how do people successfully go through that and come out on the other end joyful?
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough. And our daughter is 7.5. So when I get there, you and I will have to have the conversation and see how well I did with my own advice. But really the most important thing is listening. And it's probably the hardest thing to do. And to build, and your child relationship with a parent and a child is different, but to build that trust in communication.
Yep.
Now, especially with social media and the internet and everything else, our youth have a much more difficult time than we did. And socially, it's challenging. And it's mostly negative. It's mostly dramatic. And there's not a lot of positive that they're seeing on their phones, on their tablets, on the TV, music videos, video games, and certainly not when they interact with their peers socially. A lot of what people don't realize is their social skills are being severely impacted, because everything is through a device.
Yep.
There's very little one-on-one conversation, look someone in the eye and really engage in what someone's talking about, because their attention span is so much shorter because everything is so instant. But with those social needs, being able to really listen and teach how things can be positive when so much of what they get is negative. Because, we do it with our with the young men in our program with social media. Because it can support your dreams or it can completely destroy them.
Yep.
And it all depends on your circle, your social group. Who do you pay attention to? Who do you let influence you as a peer? Because they're their largest reinforcers. No offense, parents, we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. Their peers are far more exciting, and what their peers say have much more value than what we say. And that's why their peer group is so important, that they get around kids that are like-minded, that this goes back to youth sports, celebrate each other's success. If they're around peers that celebrate each other, they have a much better chance of having positive experiences than peers that are competing against each other.
And this is where, so this is the full circle, right, with youth sports. This is why making sure that youth sports is fun for our kids, not applying drama onto the scenario, is such a critical thing, because you're right. Everybody's in their phone. Everybody's in the drama. It's 24/7 constant, just interaction with things, distractions, all this stuff. Even school, they're all taught on devices. When you're on a soccer field, when you're on a basketball court, you can't be on a device. You can't be searching through your phone looking for things. So youth sports has to become fun again, because it's a developmental opportunity for our kids to learn things like conflict resolution, teamwork, discipline, development, and focus. But as parents, we can't lessen the experience for them.
No.
So I see this all the time. I was at a soccer tournament this weekend, and there was literally a lady hooting, hollering, cussing, tearing down a referee, and these were like 13, 14-year-old boys. So we as parents have to stop that, and we have to hold our peers accountable to not going forward with that type of behavior. It does absolutely nothing but create chaos, frustration, anxiety, all of these things for our kids. And I see it every single game that I go to. And I've been guilty of this. I'm not perfect, right? Like we have our moments as parents. We want to be passionate, and we want to help encourage, and we want to help coach, especially as former athletes, right? And you kind of mentioned this earlier. You're probably guilty of this, right? But we have to bring fun into the equation in youth sports. So going back to what you guys are doing with creating young minds and the programs that you have, like we kind of touched a little bit on it, but I want, like, what are you guys doing in Dallas for the youth specifically, not just the school, but also like the programs that you've created and kind of the community that you've built with creating young minds specifically?
Well, we still have our prep school, our academy. So we have the younger guys. We also have created, we're about to start our third season on October 29th for our CYM Undiscovered League, which is a professional basketball league for current professional basketball players, former pro players, and those aspiring to play professional. And the objective is to help them get contracts to play in higher leagues around the world and in the United States. So our guys that are 15, 16, 17, 18, they play in the Undiscovered League as well. So they're playing against guys in their 20s, late 20s, that have either already played pro or are looking to get back in, and they're getting beat up, right? And that's how it happens. That's how you develop. That's how you grow. And they practice and train with them so that now they're getting ready for college, because they're going to be more than ready to go and play at that higher level. And in the community, we help with the City League that runs for 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds. And so our guys coach and they referee, which is a good experience being a current athlete. Now you're the ref getting yelled at by the parents. Now you understand as an athlete how you should treat the officials in
That's
your games.
one thing that I think every kid should have to do is become some type of sports referee as well as work in a restaurant. Those are the two that I think are just like must-haves for our kids. They're great learning opportunities.
You're 100% right. So that they learn how to be on the receiving end of that. So now their interactions will be more positive when they have that opportunity. And we also, on Monday and Wednesday evenings, we do trainings at the local middle school for middle school kids. And that way we're helping to build a pipeline for the high school in the area so that we are really teaching, not going out and playing, really teaching and developing these middle school kids so that then they're ready in high school. And now, we have the academy, and then we have the pro league, and then there's college. And so there's all these options to build up the community. And we start with the little kids, and so we spend a lot of time in the community. It also helps our guys figure out how to be mentors and figure out how to handle a young kid looking up to them and now watching everything you do. So you go to the grocery store, we live in the community. You go to the grocery store and you see the little kid that you coached. I really hope you're behaving appropriately because they're going to model your behavior and their parents are going to see your behavior off the court. And now, are you really a valuable member of the community? And if you're building a business, now you want the community to value your services off the court. There's a lot more to what you offer than just a basketball player.
Well, you're creating an accountability-based system.
Yes.
Like all the way from these really young kids all the way up. It's an accountability-based system.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Well, thank you. We want the community to grow. And the way the community is going to grow is when the kids grow and are successful. And we want the kids and the families in the community to realize their kids can accomplish any dream that they want. Just because it sounds completely outrageous to a grown-up who couldn't do it themselves doesn't mean you want to not help the child who really could have the opportunity to do what you couldn't do. And, part of what we're doing, our goal, I would say probably for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, was to have our own facility. Right. So now we're in the process. We're working with the city. We're getting ready to start the building process for our own facility so that we can do more in the community, so that we can have after school programs, so that we can have computer classes, so that we can teach middle school and high school kids to build their own business, how to be an entrepreneur, and have our guys teach. So that there's more than basketball, but using, like we do with our guys, for the community, using basketball to get their attention.
Sports is just the platform.
Yes.
It is just the platform. And to anybody that's tuning in, it is an incredible platform. It's a way to get kids excited, having fun, engaged. I could go on and on and on, and I'm sure you could too. And we're wrapping up on time. And I'm going to drop a couple of comments down below with a link to your book and the website. But I also want to talk about the TV platform that you guys have. So for anybody that's tuning in that wants to watch some of these games or watch some of the things that you're doing, share a little bit with them about cymtv.org. So if you're just listening to the audio, that's the link to go to. But share a little bit about that platform so people can actually get engaged and watch what you guys are doing.
Oh, of course. So all of our professional games in our CYM Undiscovered League are live streamed and then replayed on demand at cymtv.org. We also have a podcast, and we created that a few years ago because 2 of the athletes in our program wanted to start being podcast hosts. They wanted to get into media. So we said, okay, well, we'll start a podcast and get all the equipment so you can learn how to do it. And we interview community members, and our young men do it. So it's their platform to get out into the community. And all of that is also on our cymtv.org. The platform can be watched on the website. It's also on Roku TV and Amazon Fire, so it can be watched from any device, and television, which is kind of neat. And so if you want to watch the guys play, then that's the easiest way to do it if you're not in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, to come see them in person.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I can't thank you enough for joining in and just sharing, about all of these different topics. I could literally talk to you for hours about all of this stuff and learn more about all the work that you guys are doing. But I want to, what are ways that people can follow your journey? I know that you guys are a nonprofit, so I would imagine that sponsorship is huge for what you guys are doing. If people are interested to just learn more about your organization, is the website the best place to go? Give a little bit more into ways that people can reach out to you.
Absolutely. So our website, creatingyoungminds.org, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to drop a link about this too.
Is a great way to find out what we're doing, what we're about, why we started, and what our program really does. And then also, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, CYM B-Ball or CYM Basketball, on any of those 3 platforms. And of course on LinkedIn, my own page, but we do have a business page, Creating Young Minds. We always want to involve as many people in the community and around the country that want to help our program grow, which can then help their business grow, or their organization, or even their personal business grow. Yes, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we're always looking for donations and sponsors. And I was explaining to our daughter this morning, she asked what a nonprofit was and says, "Well, you have one, Mommy." And I said, "Yes." I said, you know what profit means. So nonprofit means you're not trying to make money.
Yeah.
And I said, but all the money you do make goes right back into the organization, so you can continue doing more and more things. And so that's what we're about. And, we want to help as many people as we can. So even if you have, an athlete that might be interested, we also work with a lot of university students so that they can do the broadcasting at our games. They can learn how game day operations work. We want to help as many people grow in whatever fields they're interested in.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining in on this conversation. And to everybody listening, thank you for joining in. This has been such an honor. And hopefully people will take your words of encouragement around youth sports and maybe adjust behaviors a little bit. But thank you again. And to everybody listening, thanks for tuning in. And I guess until next week, see you later.